Welcome everybody to the University of Applied Research and Development's Emergency Response and Risk Management Videocast and Podcast. It's my delight to have with me today Tim Allsop and Mike Herrmann. They are the CEO and COO of the Wild Geese Group, our exclusive partners in our Emergency Response and Risk Management faculty. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, Craig. Good morning, Craig and viewers.
Great to have you here. I'm excited to interview you because you've really taught me everything I know and I don't know about emergency response and risk management. And you're our exclusive partners for the faculty. So you deliver all around the world in multiple regions, our diplomas, bachelor's, and our master's programs. So without you, this wouldn't be happening. So really excited to be talking with you today. I'd love you to just tell us about each of you, your role that you have with Wild Geese Group and the Wild Geese Academy, and tell us what you do.
Morning, Craig. Well, my role here at the MERSC and with Wild Geese Group is I'm the Chief of Operations. I essentially look after the integration between the MERSC facility here and all of our cooperative learning sites all around the world, and really look after the quality of training internally and the quality of training that's done at each of those sites, making sure that it's all compliant with the various standards that we're delivering the training to, whether it be to UARD or OPITO or TEEX, or whatever standard the client may be seeking in terms of their competency. With respect to the integration with UARD, my official role is the RPL coordinator, manager, making sure that any RPL or recognition of prior learning evidence that is submitted as part of the bachelor program of ERRM is appropriately assessed and observed and deemed relevant, or may be requiring further evidence to meet the expected standard of UARD, so that the delegate or the attendee may have that RPL recognised as points credited towards whichever program they're enrolled to be on. Tim?
Yeah, morning. My name's Tim. My role as CEO, any CEO's main role is business continuity. And a few years ago when our predominant industry that we work for is the oil and gas, they're our clients. And a few years ago when oil went from a ridiculously high price of $148 a barrel down to a ridiculously low price of $27 a barrel, it sent a shockwave across the industry, and we seeked out new ways of maintaining business. And we're predominantly a training company. We've been a training company for a decade and a half now, led mainly by the industry standard setting bodies, and there's a number of them. There's TEEC, Texas A&M, there's OPITO, there's BTEC, UK and US based ones. So one of our ideas or our concepts was to continue training and teaching, but also provide operational support. And you've heard the acronym used this morning, MERSC. MERSC stands for Managed Emergency Response Service Centre. So what we tried to promote to our clients was, we'll teach you and train you, but we'll also provide you an environment, a hub, where if you did get a large-scale emergency, you could come in and rent that room off us with our advice, support, and manage your emergency. So that worked quite well, and we're still doing that. Now, yet again, we're faced with another corroding environment with, again, oil going to sub-zero cost per barrel, and of course the COVID pandemic. So our role pretty much was to go out and seek out new ways of continuing business, preferably by enhancing the product. And that's what we did with yourself, Craig, with the UARD, with NOCN, One Awards, was to identify the gaps were always there. And we basically built a bridge with your help, built a bridge to cross that gap. And the gap from our professional perspective was that there was no out of industry accreditation, internationally formal accreditation for people who have been doing a job for a long time, but only got the smaller grade certificates of competency as opposed to something much larger like a degree. So we've just had 2 months sitting at home self-isolating, so we pretty much put everything together that we knew, and then you helped us with packaging it and putting it through the system. And this time round, our incentive, our new product line is, of course, the UARD products, all the way through to ERM, bachelors and masters. And along with that, we've also taken a leap of faith into the digital age. We've always wanted to do things digital. It's been thrown on us now to solve this problem, and there wouldn't be a company around anywhere in the world that isn't looking for digital options, from selling things online right through to delivering things online, and training is one of those things. So very recently, like last week, we managed to convince the standard setting bodies of OPITO, a UK-based, global operating but UK home-based company, that we can deliver some of our programs digitally, and we were awarded or approved as the first training provider to do that, which is a big thing, a very big thing, to actually do this training remotely, because the training we do is very much behaviour based, and we're jumping through those fiery hoops again tomorrow when we're applying for the second course, the first time for industry as well. So it's definitely exciting times. It's changed also the dynamics of the office, the skill set of the people we look for now. We're looking for youthful people who have grown up with this digital age. People my age have probably been left behind slightly, unless you have the will or the want to learn. But it's the younger people who are more familiar with this. In fact, they're expecting it. If we don't provide it, they're disappointed. So yeah, in short, in our 18th year now, but seeing some major changes happening in a very short time frame. The things that we've produced in the last 2 months would normally take us 3 to 5 years to do, but we've pretty much had no choice but to produce them if you want to stay in business. And I think that's a fair challenge for any CEO in any business at the moment.
How many other training providers around the world are delivering remote training with the OPITO standards?
So, sorry, Craig?
How many other training providers around the world are delivering remote training with the safety standards for OPITO?
At various courses, like some of the lower level courses, a lot of them are doing it. Fortunately or unfortunately for us, we've got the top 4 on the list. The top 4, sometimes we say the hardest 4, I suppose, but we're the only ones doing that at the moment. It's a real game changer, because we've had to use partners before, but once you start doing this by yourself, you may not even need partners. We just become a click-on, log-in concept. So this is uncharted waters for a lot of people, how this is going to work, and it's all very, very new. We only got approved last Friday, so we're not even a week in yet.
I think importantly for us also, Craig, is that when you pose the question as to how many other TPs, training providers around the world, do this type of thing, as Tim mentioned, we're the only ones to be able to, or approved at the moment at least, to deliver the training and assessments remotely of the OEM and soon, hopefully, with the CRO. But to the best of our knowledge, we're the only centre who delivers purely MEM, emergency management related training and assessment. And by that I mean we don't have any other focus other than our craft, and that is the emergency management. We don't have a fire ground outside or a pool outside where we're delivering any other type of training. Our focus is purely on this craft.
The offshore workers, their training are split into 3 different groups. Technical training for technical specialists, emergency response training, and emergency management training. We only do the emergency management training, and they're the people who lead the responders. So we teach the upper echelon. So let's say an oil rig or an offshore production platform has 100 people on board. We'll only have 6 of those people come through our courses. So it's a very niche market. I'm not saying it's better than any other courses. They're all very unique and equally important. But if there was, say, 200 training providers around the world, there would only be 10 that do this program. Of the 10 that do it, we operate from 6 of them. So yeah, we're definitely ahead of the curve. Yep.
And so that type of training must be quite challenging, and you've had to do it physically before. How difficult was it, and what sort of problem solving did you have to do to take that training and now deliver it remotely using technology?
Well, the training requires a simulator. We have to have a simulator that replicates or represents the distributed control system, all the fire control panels, all the gas release panels, things like this. So we already built one of those many years ago, and it's been in use for a long time. But it's joined together on a master-slave concept with a connection cable. So remotely, we couldn't have a connection cable, obviously. We're talking to clients that are tens of thousands of kilometres away. So we had to convert that software technology into a web browser concept. And that in itself is, well, our IT guy, it was over 500 hours of code writing. But all different types of code writing, because we also had to throw in sound effects, we had to throw in visualization effects. So for the student, it'd be like playing one of these modern game type things, except the outcome's a little bit more serious. If you fail, you probably don't keep your job. From the student's perspective, it's a little bit more challenging also, because the way we do it in a classroom before March, he was in there with 6 of his colleagues. Now he's in a confined space by himself, and we, the instructors, are role-playing his colleagues. So from an instructor perspective, we now work twice as hard. The people delivering the course have to work twice as hard. We had to explain this to the regulated bodies, OPITO, last week, as to the difference between how we're doing it now with remote and how it was done in the past. And the analogy I used was, the way it was done in the past was similar to an author writing a book. You would write in all the scripts for all the people in the book. Then you'd sit back and read the book, and it would just magically happen. The way we do it now is more like a movie producer. He's producing a movie, except the producer is also the director. He's also the lead, not the lead actor, because that's the student or the delegate, but he's also all the cast. So there's a lot more pressure on the instructors, and what we highlighted as a potential concern for other centres who want to go down this pathway is their trainers have to be a little bit more developed. So sure, you've got the platform of things like today. Zoom is one of the platforms. A lot of this is underpinned by Zoom, the platform, but then you've got the simulator that has to go in. But then you've got to try and create an environment where the delegate, the student, feels like he's got 6 people that he's leading, that he's working. Because remembering, but this is all about leadership. This is all about being an authority, being able to delegate, being able to pre-plan, being able to assess the situation, being able to maintain communications. So we had to build all those variables into the platform, or into the way that we're going to deliver this, the vehicle that we were going to use. So it was really, really challenging. We believe from OPITO, the regulators, that a couple of other companies had actually submitted some material, but they fell short. And by falling short, I mean they were unable to convince the standard setting body that they were capturing everything that needed to be captured. And that's where we were a little bit lucky, I suppose, because this is all we do. Like Mike said before, we don't do nothing else. So we don't get distracted into trying to maintain any other training programs. This is all we do. So it's very close to our heart. And because we do so much of it, we actually have a very educated opinion on how we think it needs to be done. And we've got no choice. If we don't do it this way, then we won't have a job or a business anymore. I do think this is the future. But there's going to be a lot of people out there, our age, if not older, who are going to struggle with the concept themselves. Because in the past, they've never done it like this. So it's that willingness to, okay, take that leap of faith to say, well, this is different to how we did it before. Yes, it's different. It's like going from a manual car to an automatic car. There's less to do. And in the future, we go into an electric car. But this is the future. This is progress.
I think that's interesting that you've highlighted that the staff themselves in your training centre on this side of the equation need to be much more multidisciplined and have a higher capacity to think about things from different angles and perform those different roles. Often people think technology will do everything for them and the human element gets taken away. And this is not the case. In fact, it's raised it up, hasn't it? So tell us some of those implications for your team and your staffing and your training going forward due to this.
Well, I think that for us to bridge that gap, as Tim said, is that, and what elevates our workload as instructional staff now on this side of the fence, so to speak, is that previously the 1 or 2 people who were involved in the delivery of the emergency scenario were only playing a few roles. Now they're playing the roles that have disappeared from the other side of the fence, and that is the environment that the person undergoing assessment is normally within. And as Tim said, one of the critical roles that we're looking at, or capabilities for him to be able to do, is manage a team. That team is physically taken away from him in a remote environment. He's sitting at his head office or home or wherever he's conducting his assessment from remotely by himself. So now the instructional staff have to role play every one of those 6 or up to 6 team members that he otherwise physically had in front of him to perform their natural roles. So as you could appreciate, in bridging that gap, there's a lot more communication required, a lot more invisible communication, if you like, and that is us talking amongst ourselves, talking to an imaginary person and then responding back as that imaginary person. So there's a lot of communication and chatter that exists in a physical environment that we have to replicate in a remote environment.
We have the scenarios, and they go for between 40 minutes to an hour. We're not looking for a successful outcome on the scenarios, i.e. he won't solve the problem. So we have to respond in a way that perhaps goes against his directions, that forces him to step outside of a normal management role into an emergency management role. So he might tell us as a role player to do something, and then we might do it wrong deliberately to force his hand to take the next step, because that's what it's all about. We're trying to assess him against a standard that says, hey, if things go wrong, what's your next option? Think outside the box. What's the next plan? So we're not necessarily going to respond to everything he asks for. So firstly, he's got to ask the right questions of us. Secondly, when we give him the wrong answers, he's got to then divert, take a detour to get us back on track again. And we've got to do that a number of times. So we're not looking for a successful destination. We may not even get to the destination. We're looking at how successful it can be to identify to change path, to get back on again, adjust, adapt, improvise, those sort of things. And something that's worked very well for us from the get-go, apart from being an owner-operator, and you're always going to put more effort into your company when you own it. When you have staff, and it's unfair to expect your staff to give more than the money you're paying them. That's never going to happen. So because you're owner-operator and possibly earning less money than most of your staff, you tend to give a lot more than you're being paid. With that in mind, we're teaching skills here, or teaching programs here that we've grown up with. Both Mike and I were in the military at a very, very young age. I was in there at 15, and we were indoctrinated into this as teenagers. So we've had all this during our working career in the military, and you can't drop it. When you get out, you engage the same processes that you learned at a young age. So that's given us the edge, I suppose, is that we're not teaching people how to wire a three plug light bulb here. We're teaching them command and control. And that's something that we've had on the battlefield at a very, very young age. So we kind of like know that product very, very well. And over the last 2 decades, we've modified that, adapted that to the oil and gas industry, because that's what we've been doing for a while now. So it's given us the cutting edge. We're very fortunate to have a very good director of technology as our partner. Also, funnily enough, ex-military. So that's been good, having that common meeting place of all being ex-military and expecting more from an individual than he would normally give.
Tim and Mike, I do want to say congratulations on what you've managed to do. You are the first in the world. And I think when you say you've been lucky, it's nothing to do with luck. It's actually absolutely your determination to make something of a very difficult circumstance, and not just hunker down and conserve where you're at, but you've actually invested into taking yourself far beyond where you were before this pandemic, before the lockdown, before financial constraints in different economies around the world. You're going to be re-entering the new normal with so many steps ahead of where you were before this was. And there are 2 types of businesses right now: those that are hunkering down and conserving and trying to survive, and those who are doubling down and being brave and doing new things. And you guys are definitely the latter. So luck has nothing to do with it. I think it's your experience and your determination to make something really, really come good out of a very difficult circumstance. So congratulations to both of you for what you're doing with Wild Geese Group and going forward for the industry. It really is a first.
So thanks, Craig. It's a pity we can't celebrate because at the moment the whole world doesn't know which way to look, you know. Like the COVID-19 pandemic, that's just the appetizer of what we're about to face. This is a precursor for our biggest problem here. Oil went backwards $85 a barrel in the last 2 months. We've got so much oil stored everywhere that no one's going to buy any, so we don't need to make any. And if we don't need to make any, we don't need to engage people. If we don't have to engage people, we don't have to train them. So there's going to be this is going to take 1 to 2 years to recover from this. So no one's really looking to spend money. No one's looking to train people. And the downside of that is, of course, people will lose their skills. And when people lose their skills, mistakes are made. And I was jokingly talking to Mike last night about when aeroplanes are allowed to fly again. I would be very nervous to get on an aeroplane that's been sitting, not hooked up to a machine for the last 2 months, let alone the pilot who probably hasn't spent any time on a simulator for the last 2 months. Like, these are going to be very nervous times because it's never been done before. There's no model to follow. And it's all great to be a leader and a pioneer, but every step you take could be the last step you take too. So you've got to be very, very cautious. You've got to engage with people. You've got to look around the environment. You've got to, like, I'm spending more time on my handphone now just looking at what people are doing. Here's an example. I collect whiskey, and I usually collect this when I go to duty-free shops at airports. Well, I haven't been travelling for a couple of months, so I'm not collecting any whiskey. But what's happening on my phone now is I'm seeing these adverts for buying it online and having it delivered and all. I'm thinking, well, see, they've found a way of making this happen. I don't know how I'd clear it through customs here in Malaysia, but everyone now is reaching out to find a way of doing things digitally and remotely. So we've pretty much done what was expected of us. Where it was challenging for us is because it's not been done before, there was no clear direction in how to do it. We had to take those steps ourselves. And it was a great big leap of faith. But fortunately, we had enough support behind us with the standard-setting body, the OPITO, to say, you prove to us that it's robust, you prove to us that you haven't diluted the end content, and we'll give you the flexibility, the freedom, and we'll trust you to go ahead and do it. So we've got that now. But now we've got to try and sell it to our clients, who at the moment are going, COVID-19 has hit us, but it's the price of oil that's going to knock us out. So we're not going to spend any money on training. We're not going to spend any money on maintenance until Q1 next year. But we're still going to operate our oil rigs with our personnel. Oh, by the way, we're going to waiver their training for a few months. And that's a recipe to failure for sure. So yes, we are in a very good position when people want to wake up and look at what's going on. Hey, we had nothing else to do. We may as well fast track the digitalization of our products. So we're fortunate that we've got that behind us now. Or we now know the pathway to go. There's 3 more products we're trying to digitalize, but now we know the pathway that's going to be acceptable. We're just going to carbon copy it 3 more times.
Right. Gentlemen, just before we wrap up, do you have some career advice for people who are coming into emergency response risk management, not necessarily oil and gas, but want to make a career of this particular sector? What sort of career advice would you give them?
Career advice. I've got about 10 years of work left in me. On a personal note, I've got a 3-year-old son, my 3.5-year-old son. He hasn't started talking yet, but he's got his own iPad and his own iPhone, and he self-educates himself on the iPad. And it's just amazing to sit back and watch him as a mid-50-year-old teaching himself the alphabet, teaching himself numbers and things like this. Career advice, all roads are going to lead back to the digital of everything. I went to a conference a few years ago. I've quoted this many, many times to people. I went to a conference a few years ago, and the keynote speaker said, a baby born today, his or her job hasn't been invented yet. And that's a very powerful impact. So career advice, follow the trends. Career advice, I don't know, be passionate, be innovative, be creative. I think they're things that need to appear in someone's DNA now, to always look for a different way of doing things. Don't have this tunnel vision that it's going to stay like that forever, because it's not going to stay like that forever. In fact, it's going to change. It's going to change. It has to change.
Mike?
Off, Mike?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to have a plan. It's easy to look at just what's immediately in front of you and maybe to the horizon. I think it's important in these times, ever changing, to look a bit further. I think being creative and innovative is essential. Choose something that you want to do and follow it, but you need to set yourself a plan.
That's great. Gentlemen, I want to really thank you for your time. Tim Allsop, Mike Herrmann from the Wild Geese Group. Congratulations on your recent approval for the remote learning. That's a real win in the industry. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, mate.